A few months ago I made a comparison between the 2010 live-action movie and the first trailer we had for Netflix's adaptation of Avatar. Although M. Night's version seems horrendous to me, I tried to be super neutral and objective, comparing cast, directors, scenarios, effects, even taking into account that this came out more than 10 years ago and by very little Netflix's live-action one. Now we have the two versions to compare them one to one, and the answer is clearer than ever: Netflix wins. But, did the 2010 version do something better? Well, not much, but there are a couple of things that were better. Stay in this video to see those little things that we can reproach to Netflix, because this gift surpassed them, and also to make a recount of what we saw in that video and see who definitely won and why. This is Appacomics. Before we start, let's do a quick review of the 10 points that were mentioned in the previous video to effectively understand why Netflix has won. Cast. Well, there is not much to say. While not all of the Netflix cast was top-notch, 90% looks pretty good, but 300% better than what we were given for the movie. Changes, dear, we have to say, the new adaptation made a lot more changes than Shyamalan. Yes, just as you hear it. The thing is that one version is 430 minutes long, and the other 103. What would have happened to us if they had the same amount of time in the movie? Despite this, most of the changes in the Netflix adaptation were including content from other seasons, books, and even comics. All these additions generally respected the essence of everything. If Katara half fell in love with Jet in a red forest, but it ended because she wanted to flood a city, in this version they gave us a Katara half falling in love with Jet in a green forest, because she wanted to blow up a part of Omashu. Let's say that although it is a considerable change, in general the essence of the story was still there. In the 2010 movie they made such subtle and minor changes, such as changing the bending, something unimportant in a series that deals with 4 nations that dominate the elements. As I mentioned in that video, changing the bending is like adapting One Piece, but instead of pirates are airline pilots. Even though Netflix sometimes went overboard with the amount of changes, such as putting 13 different facts in one episode, Shyamalan literally changed a key point that differentiates Avatar from any other series, damaging something that should be untouchable. The scenarios of the first adaptation were good, we must be honest, but the landscapes we saw in the Netflix version were beautiful. Omashu looks amazing, the poles, the air temple. If it is worth noting that having the volume, I expected to see a lot more scenery. But well, I think with the 4 or 5 that we were given was enough to keep the epicity and mostly look amazing. Creators' participation. Although in the Netflix version the creators did not participate in more than 2 episodes, which by the way were some of the best, I think it was fine. It is not known yet, and maybe in a few years we will know what exactly happened between the production and the creators, so they decided to leave. But in general it did not bother me, and I prefer a good product with a partial participation of them, than a lousy product with the total participation of them. As in the previous video, we didn't know what was going to happen, we were in a tie, but definitely, I'm going for Netflix. Budget. In the video we mentioned that the budget, and the money invested per minute of production, was higher in the 2010 version. This obviously because it was a little more money invested in much less time, but still I think it was distributed much better in the 2024 version. In addition to this, and something that we did not take into account, is how many hundreds of thousands of dollars were spent on the gigantic marketing campaign that they did for this series, with weekly videos, advertisements everywhere, hiring some stars, etc. I'm honest, I don't remember how powerful was the marketing campaign for the movie, but Netflix's was brutal. Even after almost 2 weeks of release, they are still releasing videos and posters almost daily. In case it was not clear, also for my taste wins the Netflix live action, where despite being smaller, was invested quite well. Special effects. Let's be honest, they are not 100%, but clearly the special effects look a lot better in the Netflix version. Sometimes they do feel a little strange, but there are many more times when they feel good. In the previous video I commented that we have more than 10 years difference, so at that time it was more expensive and complicated to achieve what today, but in some of your comments said something very real, even older movies that have good effects and sometimes with less budget. Also at this point I go for Netflix. Direction. Even though Shyamalan is much better known than Albert Kim, I don't think that mattered when it came time to go out on the field. It should be noted that the series had different directors, but other than that the final product was much better. Reception and critics. Well, neither reception was the best of life, and less compared to the original series, but, well, I think the difference is noticeable. Almost all the real fans of the series thought that the new adaptation was good, and as I mentioned in the channel, I think many criticisms come from people who do not know well all the content of Avatar: The Last Airbender, including comics, books, etc., and grab the output of the creators to say why it was not good as the anime. At least here in Appacomics 9 out of 10 comments were positive, of course with their buts like I would have liked that or I didn't like this, but in general the reviews are positive among fans. Costumes. Indeed, the Netflix one wins. Despite the fact that some people saw them very similar to cosplays, I think that in general they got it right with practically all of them. The signs of wear and tear on the characters were not the most realistic in the county, but it was especially noticeable on the actors, and my preference for a little less bright colors went away about 15 minutes into the first episode, where I said, good thing they made them that way. They give more life to each character and remind us that it comes from an animated series. Music and soundtrack. Last but not least, the Netflix soundtrack obviously outshone the Shyamalan one. Listening to the original songs a little bit reversed was an oral pleasure, if that exists. I don't feel it was a 10 either. There were some scenes where I didn't like the music, but very few, and in general everything was very beautiful. If I have to emphasize that, I would have liked to hear the song at some point. But in general the episodes were quite dramatic with sad or suspenseful endings, so it was not left to end that way.
Shh, I'm trying to watch.
By far this new version won, surpassing Shyamalan's in practically everything. Last night doing the script for this video I needed to watch some parts to refresh my memory, and to this day I still feel a little embarrassed about many of the scenes, giving a discomfort and saying, "What?" Something that did not happen to me at any time with the new adaptation. Of course I respect those who like this version, and I also know that there are many who saw the series thanks to this thing around here, and I'm glad it is so, and I respect your opinion. This is just mine, and the idea is not to throw hate to the movie. Now yes, even though Netflix won, if there are some tiny little things that at least I personally preferred from the 2010 version. They are very small and would affect practically nothing to the final result, but that it was better was better. Indeed, I think the casting for the princess was much better in the Shyamalan version. I feel that this girl is exactly the same, and compared to the actress they chose for the Netflix version, she is much better. Of course, they couldn't have used the same girl since she is currently 33 years old, but it's not like she did a lot of martial arts in either adaptation. Let's just say it wasn't a limiting factor for the role of you. Another little thing I thought was cool that they did in the 2010 movie was that when you enters the water of the spirit oasis to give her life back to Tue, her hair turns black, something super minor, but it was cool that they added it to Shyamalan's version. Another thing I would have liked to see are the statues of the different avatars in real size. While we saw a reference to this with the ones Zuko had on his ship, the way all the statues were illuminated in the air temple in the animated series was totally epic, and at this level it would have been God. Anyway, I don't think it's out of the question for the next season since we don't know the other air temples and they could easily put it in. The last thing I like the most in this old version is Aang's glider. I already mentioned it in several videos. I think it looks great. And this one I felt much less realistic, the flight and the effect. As you can see, the things that for my taste were better in the previous version are so minimal that practically do not matter. Luckily we had a pretty decent adaptation and it was a success, so a book 2 and 3 has already been announced. I'd love to know what you guys think. What did they do better in the 2010 version? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for sticking around. Good weekend to all and see you in a few days with more videos. Bye bye.